learning. I taught myself how to bead in 6 months, but you can do it in 3 months. In this tutorial, you will be learning how to make this. You will learn all the basics that you need to know on how to make a net stitch. Things like what to do when you're running out of thread, how to put in a stopper bead. The pattern is included, or you can download that for free. I've also included links to other things you might need, like beads, scissors, needle. Today we'll be making a 2-color design, so be sure to buy at least 2 different colors of bead. If you don't want to buy these things separately, you can always send me a message and I'll put together a box for you with the pattern included. We need to put in our stopper bead. For this video, please thread your needle and make the length of your thread as long as your arm. To make sure that at some point during the video, you run out of thread and I can teach you how to add more. All we do when we put in a stopper bead is we thread our bead like this about 3 or 4 times until the bead is locked in place. When you do this, you want to be careful not to get your thread with your needle. You want to make sure that every time you thread your bead, you're not threading through any old thread. In other words, make sure that every time you put your needle through your bead, you are putting it through those empty spaces and not where there is thread already. This is a lot easier to do when you use a bigger bead. Here I'm using a size 5. This is because bigger beads have bigger holes and is therefore easier to We use a stopper bead to keep our beads in place. They are there to keep the beads from running out, and so the test to make sure that the beads are correct is by pulling on it. If it doesn't move, you're done. To start off, we will pick up 14 beads of the same color. My color is dark green. This will be our first line. Your color can be any color that you like, and this color will be our background color. When we start the second line, we need to change direction. It's important to know from the very beginning that when we change direction, we always pick up 4 beads. When we go to insert our needle into our first line, we skip the first bead and insert it into the second bead. At this point, you can hold it however you feel comfortable. Just make sure you're able to pull and to keep your work neat. And this is what it should look like. From this point onwards, we will pick up 3 beads. So you pick up 3 beads, you skip bead 1, bead 2, and insert into the 3rd bead. Then you pull. To keep my work tight, after I have pulled, I like to wrap my thread around my finger to keep my beads in place. Moving on, we pick up 3 beads. You skip bead 1, bead 2 and insert into the 3rd bead. So that's bead 1, bead 2 and that's the 3rd bead. You start counting from where your thread leaves off. We pick up 3 beads again, skip 2 beads and insert into the 3rd. Don't forget to pull for neat work. So we're doing this for the last time. You pick up 3 beads, skip 2, insert your bead into the 3rd. The last bead you insert your needle into will be the bead that is right next to the stopper bead. If this is not the case for you, you have made a mistake and you need to restart. It's usually a counting mistake, so it's very easy to fix. However, if you are here with me, then we are ready to start the 3rd line. When we start the 3rd line, we will change direction once again, so that means we will be picking up 4 beads. From this point onwards, we will insert our needle into the bead in the middle. The bead in the middle looks like this. I'll show you. In action, the bead in the middle is the bead in the middle between the 3 that you last picked up. So 1, 2, that is the bead in the middle. The bead in the middle can be described as the second bead from the 3 beads you last picked up in the last row. It can also be described as the bead in the middle. Bead in the middle is the easiest way to explain it, and I'm sure if you watch for long enough, you'll also be able to identify it in your own work. Don't forget to pull and keep your work neat. If this is still not making sense, I will try to explain it just a little differently in the next part. So, you pick up 3 beads. Between this point and this point, there are 3 beads. We want to insert it into the bead in the middle of that 3. Pick up 3 beads again, and we are going to bead all the way till the end. You might have noticed that every time I change direction, I flip my beadwork over. That is not necessary, it's just comfortable for me. If you lay your beadwork on the table, you don't need to flip, but you do need to pick up 4 beads every time you change direction, and here is why. That extra bead allows us to have an edge that looks like this. We want a flat edge, and without that extra bead, it would curve. So, pick up 4 beads and insert your needle into the bead in the middle. For this next row, I won't explain how to do it, but rather I'm going to do it and show you. I think I have explained enough. This part is for the people who learn by watching others. In the next row, we will start creating our diamonds, and I will teach you how to follow the pattern. So if you haven't yet, go download the free PDF pattern. It's in the description box below. We are starting at line 5, which in the pattern is where the red line is. The pattern will show you how many beads to pick up, which colors and in which order. It will show you direction and also which beads to insert your needle into. So if you can't find your middle bead, the pattern will show you where the middle bead is. When you follow the lines, we can see that the next 3 beads are 3 dark green beads. We go back to our pattern and we see that the next 3 beads are 1 dark green bead, 1 light green bead, and 1 dark green. You only need to follow the arrows when you do this and you won't get lost. Learning how to bead is the hard part, following the pattern is easy. The next 3 is 3 dark green beads. And the last 3 is 3 dark green. When we change a direction, it looks like this in the pattern. So 4 dark green beads. It is important to follow the colors in the order that the pattern tells you to, so that you can create whatever shape it wants you to create. At this point, I think you must understand, but I'm going to bead the next 2 lines with you for those who learn by seeing. If it helps you keep track of where you are in your pattern, you can print out the pattern and follow along with a pen. You can pause the video and follow the pattern on your own. Then when you have about 8 centimeters to about 10 centimeters of thread left, you can press play and I will teach you how to add more thread. So you're running out of thread and you have about 8 centimeters of thread left. The first thing we want to do is we want to secure the work that we've already done, and then we can add more thread. Pick up the next 3 beads in your pattern and insert your needle in the bead in the middle and the bead that is right next to it. Now we will insert our needle into this bead over here. What we are doing is we are working our thread inside the beading so we can get to a place where we can tie knots and secure the work. Now we're going to move into this bead. From this point onwards, you can go in any direction you like except for up. As long as your thread is always inside your beads and is never outside, we don't want to see any thread outside our beadwork. You can follow what I'm doing here, and eventually we'll get to a place where we want to start tying knots. We are going to start to tie our knot here. If I bring you closer, we're going to start tying knots here where my needle is around this bead. To tie our knot, we are going to insert our needle on this side of our bead and take it out on the other side. If I show you again, we're tying a knot around that bead. So we insert on one side and take it out on the other side. We create a loop on top and we insert our needle into that loop you pull and you guide your thread where you want it to go. Remember, we don't want any thread showing outside, so guide it so that it's in between the beads. We're going to move away from this knot and to another spot and tie another knot. We want to at least tie 3 knots. If you still don't understand how to tie knots, I'll try to explain it a different way in this next knot. So we're going to tie a knot here around that bead. We will insert our needle on this side and take it out on the other side, like that. Or we can say we are going to insert our needle on this hole here, grab it from the bottom, reinsert it on the hole that is opposite to that hole, form a CL loop, and insert our needle in the loop and guide our knot to where we want it to be. Don't forget to pull. Pulling is also important here. I'm going to tie one more knot and just let you watch this time. After you have tied your last knot, go into at least 1 bead before cutting your thread off. This just keeps the other knot from unraveling. When you're done, cut your thread off. So now our work is secure and we can add more thread. First, we need to find the spot where we left off, and that spot is over here. We left off here, and that is the bead we need to go into. So we are going to travel along this line and make our way back into that point. So you can insert your needle at any bead along that line after you have threaded your needle, of course. Side note, if you start anywhere else, it doesn't matter as long as you make it back to that bead that I showed you earlier, or wherever that bead is for you. A trick I like to use is to tie a knot at the end of my thread like this to stabilize my thread as I am trying to tie knots when I'm in my work. I like to tie at least 2 knots so that it's thick enough to stabilize my thread. So when I pull through, thread gets stuck and is stable as I work. You can cut this off at the end when you're done beading. Now I'm going to go back into my beadwork and tie knots to secure my threads and work my way back to that 1 bead. We are going to tie knots exactly the same way we did when we were trying to secure the work. It's the same method. You travel through, put your thread inside the beads, tie a knot to secure the thread, and keep on going till you get to where you want to be. A reminder, tie at least 3 knots. We don't want to see any thread outside. Those 2 things are important. Tie at least 3, you can do 2 maybe, but at least 3, and make sure that your thread does not show outside the beads. Now that you are here, you can carry on beading exactly where you left off, as if nothing happened. There are only 2 things that I have left to teach you. I need to teach you how to close your work off so that you have something that looks like this. And I also need to teach you how to take out the stopper bead so you don't have a big orange bead attached to your work. Carry on beading till you get all the way to the end, but before you do that, please leave me a comment and let me know what I did right and did wrong. I would love to become a better teacher, but if you have nothing to say and you like the video, then please like the video. If you learned something today, please subscribe to my channel and become my very first subscriber. You will have noticed in the pattern that the last row, the closing row, has less beads than the other rows. When we close, we don't need the middle bead anymore. Because we won't be adding another row, so a connector bead is no longer necessary. So we just take that bead out and close our work with the rest of the beads, which in our case is just 2 beads. Once you have inserted your last row of beads, we will go into our beadwork and start tying knots to secure the work. The way you do it is the same way you did when you ran out of thread. You work your way into your pattern and then you tie the knots, making sure that your thread does not show up outside and that you tie at least 3 knots. When we're done with this, we will take out the stopper bead. We are going to pull on the thread one by one until you feel the thread that is ready to come out. You will pull that one all the way out. You will be able to feel which thread is ready to come out and which isn't. All you have to do is go through them one by one, over and over again, until you have pulled all the thread out. so that you can remove the stopper bead. Once you have removed your stopper bead, tie a couple of knots with the thread. You can do 2 or 3 knots. It really doesn't matter here. In fact, this step might not be even necessary, but I'm not sure, so I do it anyway. Then you're going to take your 2 threads, you're going to pick one of these threads and you're going to thread a needle with it. It doesn't matter which one you pick, just pick one and thread your needle. Now we're going to go back into our beadwork and tie knots to secure our work. You want to make sure your thread is uneven so that you end up tying knots with a double thread, especially if your thread is thin. Always remember, tie at least 3 knots and make sure that the thread does not show up outside the beads. Well done, you've made it to the end of the video. Please share your finished pieces with me. I'd love to see what colors you chose. On TikTok, create a video, tag me. In the next lesson, I'm going to teach you how to close this so that we can make a bracelet or a headpiece, whatever you want to make. Let me know in the comment section what else you would like to learn. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.